Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and today's episode is based on the first movement of the suite by Ravel called Gaspard de la nuit, which is Gaspard of the night, meaning treasurer of the night or keeper of the treasures. These are based on poems by Aloysius Bertrand, which were written in 1836, and Bertrand says he attributes them to a man, a very mysterious man, who gave him the poems and later discovered that it was the devil himself, if I'm recalling all of the details of that correctly. This is one of the most difficult pieces in the piano repertoire, partly because Ravel was writing Scarbo to be harder than Islamé by Balakirev, and this first movement, Ondine, which we'll be covering as much as possible today, is no exception to that level of difficulty. So don't make the mistake of trying to play this if you haven't played, quite a few really difficult things in the piano repertoire. This will challenge you in very unique ways, and you won't really do the piece justice if you're not technically and musically ready for that. When I say musically ready, if you don't have a really good sense of voicing and balance and rubato and dynamic shaping and creating special effects, you probably won't do the piece justice. Another little piece of advice: I have a very advanced teenage student playing this. I think he's 16 or 17 years old, and I made him play the whole thing pretty evenly. He was starting to experiment so much with rubato too early on, and things started to get so warped just with his sense of rubato. I said, let's cut that out until we're technically proficient with the entire piece. We have the whole piece really solid, and then let's start to put in more rubato. And that was very helpful for him. And I've noticed, I've taught this a handful of times over the years. I've played this since I was 13 or 14 years old. A lot of people thought my teacher was insane for giving that to me at that early of an age. But I can tell you I was winning competitions when I was 17 and 18 because I had several years of experience with this piece. I also have many recordings of this available on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere you can look. And so I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of just playthroughs to show you and demonstrate. You can refer to those recordings. I want to dig in today and get as much done as possible because it's going to be hard enough to try to cover this piece on its own. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that I want you to think about is the balance of the hand with these chords. This is a very confusing little sequence. And to train the hand to do that takes a lot of time. Let me show you a few tricks that I've used along the way to help make it easier, especially for my students. It's been so long since I learned this that I'm not even sure what I used. My teacher at that age was so brilliant. I'm sure she gave me a lot of these tricks, but things that I've used recently in my teaching. First, just play the chords and get that pattern in your hand. So think in groups of two 30-second note groups. So you're going to be thinking of 8 total notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then it repeats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you're going to notice in different editions, and let's talk for just a second about editions. You're going to notice that sometimes it's written a little differently between different editions. So if you look at the first edition, the Durand edition, I believe that is, or the Henley edition, or this edition, I actually learned with the Alfred edition. And you might think, oh, Alfred's like just a beginner's edition. But I really like all the commentary that Nancy Bricard puts in here, and she references how, in bar 5 and 6, some of those figures are different. How, like, Paul Badura-Skoda played this for Ravel, and he said, no, that those figures should continue as they are at the beginning. So I would say my personal preference is for those figures to stay consistent. So when you get down to bar 5, for instance, that continues versus that tends to, that's changing the pattern. So it's up to you, however you want to do that. Just do your research between editions. And I did that. I compared a lot of editions, and I made a choice to do that based on the commentary of Pablo Dorascota as well as Robert Cacetesis. So after you've done this, and by the way, you want a very loose hand, and it helps if you always think, this is something I've learned recently, is rotating to the left with chords. It's very, very tiny. You can't really tell. That will keep your chords more grounded. Okay, so, and then we'll rotate to the right and then rotate back to the left twice. A lot of students, they get tight on that. And if you think of just the tiniest little rotation, that can really help the hand. As you increase that tempo, one thing that I notice students doing is they tend to accent the repeated chords. And then their hand gets tight, and then they stop rotating and they stop moving. And then they don't, you will lack the clarity. So, see, my hand's very relaxed. I could continue this for quite some time. Okay, so the other thing that I'm spending so much time on this first line because I think of any of the piano repertoire, this is one of the hardest pieces to start on stage. One of the things that I did as a teenager in a lot of these competitions that I was competing in, I remember this international competition in New York, one of the judges after the competition came up to me and she's like, because we weren't allowed to try the piano beforehand, she's like, "Are you insane? Like, why would you start with Ondine on a piano you haven't even tried?" She's like, "But you pulled it off." And I think I got second prize in that competition. And she's like, "That's why we placed you so high. One of the reasons is you just showed total mastery that first line." And I learned early on how to start this without being completely terrified. I start from a little higher. Now, I'm not a big fan of like dropping the weight of like from great heights above, but I just noticed as I just started a little bit higher and just kind of dropped in and back. Sorry, so I dropped down and back, just like that. And it doesn't have to be huge, but what I've seen a lot of students do, and I did this quite a few times before I started using this, is I'd go, you get scared and then all of a sudden, or you might do, and have a bunch of ghost notes at the beginning. So drop down and back a little bit. And once you get really good at that, you may not even need to drop that much. I just honestly just do a little wrist motion. So just lift the arm and the wrist together. And that seems to really help. Obviously, use that una corda pedal, far left pedal. You're going to need it, and then just play louder on your melody when it comes in. Okay? I remember when my teacher first gave this to me, she's like, "Let's put just a few lyrics to this just to get you shaping it in the correct way." So she said, "Ondine, my name is Ondine." And that's as far as we went with the lyrics. Okay, but the reason she wanted to say that is Ondine. You don't say Ondine and punch that second note. And that's very tempting to do if you're not careful. So a little bigger. Don't start too soft and then come down and then re-crescendo to there and then less. Now you can pull this off to getting softer to there if you're careful, but make sure that it projects enough. I like to personally climax there, so go to there and then come back down because you have a long descent that way. This passage gets really tricky, so let's just start going slowly through this. Go to there, then less. And right here, maybe drop that. I'm going with the top line in this Alfred edition. That's what they have written there. I would drop that second E sharp. No one's going to hear that because this is just a quivering little figure, and it will set that up. If you're not careful and you hold on to that right hand too long and you go to play that E sharp, nothing's going to come out. So I always like, by the way, this is a good, just general piece of advice. It's not always the case, but I'd say probably 80-90% of the time it's the case. The hand that is less busy, I like to go on top, because I like the hand that has a lot more going on, especially like virtuosity or technically a lot more going on. I like that to be a little more grounded. I don't like to be trying to do things that are really hard up here. So I would have the left hand go over the right hand for a lot of this, okay? So just touching on pedal. I like that to all be in one pedal, and then change. An optional pedal would be change, change. Again, this one is optional right here. Change. For sure you want a pedal here. Change, 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 change. And I like to take a little time there. And I think that's so fresh, that A sharp that's coming out of nowhere. So take just a little bit of time on that, just to kind of settle into that. And then grow to there. A little side down, a little softer. And then to there. Then less to there. Okay, so such a beautiful harmony. By the way, you should absolutely, those poems, you need to read those. Do not start this piece without reading the poems first. This first poem is about Ondine, or an Ondine. If you read it, it's like a water sprite, some type of mermaid-like creature is my guess. I don't know exactly what that is, but she's trying to seduce a man to be king of the lakes with her, but really it's seducing him down to his death. That definitely goes back to kind of that mysterious, dark, cunning, devilish description by Bertrand of how he acquired these poems. So I think each of these has an element of death. The second movement, Le Gibet, or the gibbet, shows a man hanging in the setting sun. Very disturbing imagery if you read that poem. And then Scarbo is about a demon, or I can't remember what they called him, but it was like this little elf demon dwarf that keeps, named Scarbo, who keeps haunting this unfortunate person. And each of these have that element of death. So even though this is just so beautiful, it'd be easy just to kind of play that like a Chopin nocturne that's so pure and loving. But this, sorry. There's kind of this like dark motivation. Again, crescendo to there. Crescendo to there, regrow to there, diminuendo to there, and die away to there. Okay, so I'm talking